Hello, I'm Richard with EV4U Custom Conversions. And in this video we're asking the question, what makes a car a classic? And the reason we're asking the question is that we get a lot of emails where people want to convert something like a 1995 Honda Civic or a 1990 Chevy Suburban. And our kind of default response to those type of questions is that we are only converting classic vehicles. And so at this time, because of the volume we do and everything, we're not doing all classic vehicles. We are at that point where we need to pick and choose just due to the space and time available. But this is the one that seems to get people excited, because they'll email back and say, well, it's a 1995, it's over 25 years old, it's a classic. My Toyota, Celica is a classic. Well, I don't know. So, it comes down, to where, I don't want to debate with somebody whether or not, the car they think is a classic or not. So then you have to kind of give them a little more harsh response, and that is, we're not interested in converting your vehicle. But it just brings up the question, what makes a car a classic? So if you research it, what's a classic car? I mean, there's lots of criteria. 20 years and older, 25 years and older. This, that, and the other. I mean, it depends on who you ask. That's the big thing. So if you ask a certain group, they're going to say it's, cars earlier than 1948. It just really depends on where that individual or that group is coming from. I was real involved with the Central California Chevy GMC Truck Association back in the 90s, and they considered anything, it was a classic. It was 72 and older, so built in 1972 or earlier. So it just depends. But some of the things that are taken into account when we talk about a classic, the age of the vehicle, which we were just discussing, the rarity. Sometimes it can be a vehicle that, regardless of age, because it's so rare, it's like automatically a classic. Design. Some vehicles are so unique in their design and their features that they become an instant classic. And then, of course, public perception and desire. I mean, there are people that will argue with you that a Volkswagen bus is not a classic vehicle. Well, maybe not. But there's definitely no arguing the fact that the perception and desire that it is a special vehicle is there. So, a couple things that I've always said about a classic car, and why my wife and I have driven classic vehicles, or what I consider a classic vehicle, for over 40 years. And so a classic car must possess significant historical interest to be collectible and worth preserving or restoring versus scrapping. Okay? That's part of it. The bottom line to me, though, and why owning classic vehicles has been good to me over the years, is that a classic vehicle is one that is increasing in value versus a vehicle that's decreasing in value. So, for instance, my wife was driving a newer GMC Suburban at one time, and I replaced it with a classic Suburban. And I explained to her, every day that goes by, the new one is worth less and the classic is worth more. And sure enough, we sold it for a lot more after driving it for 22 years than we did when we paid for it. And so I'm going to give you a few examples, and these are ones that are familiar to me, but there's lots of examples out there. You could use a Ford Mustang or something like that. But the ones I'm going to use are what I've just been talking about. For instance, a 1972 Chevy Cheyenne Super Truck. Okay, the price new in 1972, $2,680. The current price, and of course this depends on condition, and so if it's the showroom condition, it's going to be the high end of this. But the current price is anywhere from $15,000 to $60,000. And so I know back in the 90s when we were restoring them and selling them, they were going for $35,000 to $45,000 with an investment to restore them of $15,000 or $16,000. So definitely worth the investment, and we had a lot of fun with it. A 1972 Porsche 911, price new, $7,200 to $10,200, depending on the model and the features. Current price of a 1972 Porsche 911, $40,000 and up, and I mean way up. A 1964 VW Beetle, price new, $1,600. Current price, $20,000 plus. And again, we're not talking about, one that you find, out in the field somewhere. We're talking about the price of new versus what, if it was in that same condition today, what it's worth. A 1951 VW Transporter, 23 window Zamba, okay, which cost $2,200 when new. Today, it'd be $22,000. I mean, let me say that so there's no misunderstanding. In 1951, a $2,200 car in today's money would be $22,000 today. Okay, so if you look at what that equivalency is from 1951 to 2021, the cost that in 51 was $2,200. It would be like buying a $22,000 car today. Okay, I want to make that clear. So there's going to be 4 factors in the pricing here, and so this is going to be based on the condition and how they're rated by the powers that be. And so a number 4 condition, fair condition, it would be $39,000. So in today's money, it'd be $22,000 new. It's still worth $39,000 in fair condition, not new condition. A number 3, which is good condition, they're valued at $60,600. Okay. Excellent condition, which is what I would refer to as a new car, it's worth $111,000. $22,000 to $111,000. I'd say they've done pretty well. And then for a concourse, a number 1 condition, concourse condition, $198,000. But that's the average. I've seen them go for well over $200,000 at auction. As a matter of fact, we were in Phoenix not too long ago and saw one go at Jackson Barrett for over $200,000. So let's talk about the classic car in regards to a conversion, or cars in general. What are some of the features that can determine conversion desirability? Well, weight's a big one. So the Suburban's kind of out the door. Rolling resistance. All-wheel drive, four-wheel drive vehicles aren't quite as desirable because they're not going to get the same range as the equivalent two-wheel drive would get. Not that you can't convert them, just know ahead of time that they're not going to have the same range as a two-wheel drive. And then drag coefficient. So that can be huge. And then integrated electronics and an automatic transmission. We do not recommend converting vehicles with an automatic transmission unless you're looking at doing a lot of modification and you're going to put like a Tesla setup in there and you're going to remove the transmission altogether. But that's not what I would call a typical conversion because that's going into a pretty high dollar and a high skill set to do that type of conversion. So weight, rolling resistance, drag coefficient, integrated electronics, automatic transmission. And so weight obviously cuts out certain cars. Rolling resistance, like I said, all-wheel drive. Drag coefficient, the VW bus, which is a popular conversion, has a high drag coefficient. It's about a 0.51. But a VW Beetle, another pod conversion, isn't very good either. They're 0.48. And as for reference, a Tesla Model S is a 0.24. And then integrated electronics. The newer vehicles have a lot of integrated electronics, and a lot of it has to do with emission control and so forth. And when you remove the internal combustion engine, you lose all of those input signals that are going to the whatever they're calling their onboard computers, ICU or whatever. Depending on the vehicle, some of them, they're so integrated that when you remove a vehicle with those, the internal combustion engine with those inputs, the vehicle just goes into a, shutdown mode, and you're going to have to track down a lot of little idiosyncrasies. So not the most desirable. So here's just a few things that I thought you might find interesting. Then again, might not find the video interesting at all. 1969, Volkswagen introduced the first onboard computer system with scanning capability in their fuel-injected Type 3 models. Actually owned one of those. 1975, the Datsun 280Z had onboard computers that were largely motivated by their need for real-time tuning of fuel injection systems. And those things, don't affect the conversion at all because they're just engine related. They weren't integrated into any other of the car electronics. And then in 1991, they introduced, and this became law for all vehicles to have these things. 1991, OBD2, which is the onboard diagnostics. And then 1996 was the OBD2. 1991, OBD1, 1996, OBD2. And then 2008, all cars sold in the United States are required to use ISO 15765-4. It's a signaling standard. It's a variant of the controller area network, CAN bus. And so, when you get to 1996 and later, you start having a little more issues. After 2008, you have a lot more issues. And so when you're doing it for hire, like we do, one of the attractions of doing classics is they don't have integrated electronics. and they tend to be lighter. Modern cars have a lot more safety features, which add weight, but they're safety features, so I'll let you decide that one on your own. But, you know, when you have to quote for a job, unless you can find somebody that's willing to pay you for your time and materials, and they don't have an idea what it's going to cost in the end. But we give people a price, and that's the price. They don't pay a penny more. And we can do that because we know what the labor is going to be, and we know what the component costs are going to be. But when you start getting into vehicles with a lot of integrated electronics and things that can cause unexpected issues, all bets are gone. And that's not a road that we want to go down as a business. So that's what makes a car a classic, and a little bit more. So hope you found this interesting. If you have any questions, email us at info@evforYouNow.com. Be happy to answer your questions, and thanks for watching.